Thank you for viewing this American Sewing Guild educational series on creating a pinked seam finish. A pink seam finish is a simple way to finish the cut edge of a seam allowance to prevent the fabric from raveling when washed and worn. This seam finish works best with crisp, tightly woven fabrics. It can be used for those who are beginning sewers who perhaps are just learning the different types of seam finishes. It's a perfect seam finish for children's play clothes, as well as cotton blouses, skirts and pants, or in any area where the sewer wishes to prevent fabric from raveling. This type of seam finish is not good for very loosely woven fabrics, extremely lightweight or sheer fabrics, or extremely heavyweight fabrics. A pinking shear is very similar to a dressmaker's shear, except it has zigzag type teeth instead of a blade. The teeth intersect when the blade is closed around the fabric, creating a sawtooth edge. Hold the pinking shear as you would a dressmaker's shear. The blades of these shears hold their sharp edge for quite some time. They will need to be sharpened from time to time, though. Check with your local fabric store for someone who can sharpen them when needed. To begin, create a plain seam. Meld the seam and press open the seam allowances. Place the blade of the pinking shear along the cut edge of the seam allowance. You will only want to take off the very edge of the fabric. Work with a single seam allowance and trim the edge along the entire length. The seam allowances can also be closed together and trimmed as one. This isn't always possible, so test the fabric to see if it would work. This does save a bit of time when there are many seams to be trimmed. Give the seam a final quick press and it's completed. The pinked edge will help prevent the fabric from raveling. Let's watch how to pink the edge of a seam allowance. First, create a plain seam. Make sure the pinking shears are sharp. The seam allowance can be pinked by sliding the shear under the seam allowance. But it's really best to turn back the fabric, exposing only the one seam allowance to be sure no other fabric accidentally gets cut. Open the shear and pink just the cut edge of the seam allowance. Continue along the seam until it's completed, then do the other side. Thank you for viewing this American Sewing Guild video. If you have any questions, email ramona@asg.org. The American Sewing Guild is a national nonprofit organization dedicated to people who believe sewing is a rewarding and creative activity. If you enjoyed this video, join ASG to view our library of in-depth educational videos on various sewing topics. They are free to our members. Members also enjoy discounts from vendors who support our organization, along with many other benefits.